2 years after the divorce, the millionaire takes his new girlfriend to work. But when he sees his ex with a baby and a billionaire, he freezes. Traffic on Park Avenue, in the heart of Manhattan, moved at its frantic weekday pace. Inside his gleaming black Mercedes, Marcus Reed smiled at the young woman sitting beside him. "See you at dinner, darling. The investor meeting today will be long." He leaned in and gave her a quick kiss, a gesture that was more about possession than affection. The young woman, his new girlfriend, smiled back, full of ambition, and stepped out of the car, walking with purpose toward the entrance of one of the region's most imposing commercial buildings, which housed the advertising agency where she worked. Marcus waited for her to pass through the revolving door before shifting the car into gear to continue on his way. It was at that exact moment that his world stopped. From the same glass door his girlfriend had just entered, another figure emerged. It was a woman of serene elegance, dressed in an impeccably cut suit that spoke of success and confidence. Walking beside her was a tall man with a commanding presence, who held her hand with protective intimacy. And nestled securely in her arms, a boy with brown curls observed the world with large, curious eyes. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. He slammed the brakes so abruptly that the car behind him honked in protest. He didn't hear it. His eyes were glued to the woman. Time seemed to contract, and for a second, he was no longer in Manhattan in 2025, but 2 years earlier, in the living room of his penthouse, a few miles away. The woman was Lauren, his ex-wife. The man beside her was unmistakable. Elias Thorne, a logistics billionaire whose fortune and power made Marcus's own millions seem like pocket change. But what truly stole the air from his lungs was the child. A boy who would be the exact age. Marcus's blood ran cold. His hands gripped the steering wheel with a force that made his fingers ache. The woman he had discarded, the woman he imagined had sought refuge in some corner of Queens to live an anonymous, forgotten life, was here, radiant, powerful, beside one of the most influential men in the city, and holding a child who had to be his son. Lauren passed a few feet from his car, engrossed in an animated conversation with Elias, and her gaze never once crossed with his. To her, he was invisible, just another car in traffic. To him, in that moment, she was the personification of his greatest mistake, a ghost from the past rising to collect a debt he didn't even know he owed. The question hit him with the force of a punch. What have I done? Chapter 1. The Abandonment and the Vow. The memory of that day, 2 years ago, flooded his mind with the violence of a wave. The afternoon sun bathed the Manhattan penthouse, the blue sea stretching to the horizon, a landscape of peace that contrasted brutally with the silent war in his living room. Lauren was waiting for him, sitting on the white linen sofa, her hands clasped on her lap in an attempt to contain the tremor. She had just returned from the doctor, a small white envelope tucked into her purse. Inside, the blurred image of a future. "Marcus, I need to talk to you," she said. Her voice was low, but carried an urgency he chose to ignore. He was standing by the wine cellar, selecting an expensive bottle for a dinner she would not be invited to. "Not now, Lauren. I'm busy." "It's important," she insisted, standing up. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air. Lauren watched him, her heart beating a mix of fear and hope. She longed for a smile, a hug, a glimpse of the man she had married. Instead, he placed the wine bottle back in its spot, with a dry, definitive clunk. The silence that settled was sharper than any cruel word. When he finally turned to face her, his face was an icy mask. "That's not part of my plans right now." "Our plans," she corrected, her voice breaking. "We're a couple, Marcus." "Couples break up," he retorted, walking to the bar to pour himself a glass of whiskey. And our marriage ends here. I met someone else. She's young, ambitious. She has no baggage. There's no room for a child in the life I want to build now. The word baggage hurt her deeply. Her child, the fruit of the love she believed existed, reduced to a burden. The pieces clicked together with painful clarity. The increasingly frequent business trips, the whispered phone calls, the distance that had become an insurmountable chasm. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was the cold, hard reality. "So that's it?" she whispered, feeling the floor disappear beneath her feet. "After all these years, you throw me away as if I were nothing?" "Don't be melodramatic," he said, downing his drink in one go. "I'm not a monster. I'll take care of you. Keep the apartment. I'll give you a generous allowance. You won't have to worry about money. Just leave me alone. Raise that child away from me. Say the father died. Make up a story. My life, starting today, follows another direction." In that instant, amid the devastating pain, an ancestral strength awoke in Lauren. The pride, the dignity that were the backbone of her upbringing, asserted themselves over the despair. She straightened up. Her chin was raised, and her eyes, now clear of tears, stared at him with an intensity that made him step back. "I don't want your money, Marcus. I don't want your apartment, not your guilt-bought allowance. I want absolutely nothing that comes from you." She picked up her purse, where the first ultrasound of her baby rested. That small piece of paper was now her only compass. "You're not just ending a marriage. You are abandoning your son. And I promise you, one day, you will regret this with every fiber of your being." He let out a short, disdainful laugh. "Good luck with your new life, then." She didn't waste another word on him. She turned her back and walked to the door. Every step an affirmation of her independence. Crossing that threshold, she left behind not just a husband, but a life of appearances, of empty luxury, and of a love that proved to be a lie. She did not look back. Chapter 2. The invisible ascent, her escape was methodical and quick. She sold the jewelry he had given her, transforming symbols of a false love into capital for a real future. With the money, she rented a simple apartment in Queens, across the river from Manhattan. A place where the Reed name didn't open doors. A place where she could just be Lauren. Anonymity was her shield. The first months were a brutal test of her resilience. The pregnancy was marked by loneliness and uncertainty. She struggled with work searches, as her impeccable resume raised too many questions about her recent employment and her separation from Marcus. One day, passing a large, modern, glass-fronted building in Queens, she saw a sign. "Hiring for General Services Team." The name on the facade was imposing. Thorne Global Logistics. The irony was cruel, but necessity was stronger. Here, no one would know her. To the cleaning crew, a foreign degree was worth no more than a pair of willing hands. The interview was quick and impersonal. The supervisor, a tired but fair-looking woman, barely glanced at her face. They needed someone to cover the night shift. The work was heavy. The pay minimum. But it was a start. It was the dignity she sought. Lauren accepted immediately. Thus, the woman who once attended gala dinners and discussed contemporary art in Paris began wearing a gray uniform and pushing a cleaning cart through the silent, empty corridors of a corporate empire. The smell of disinfectant replaced Chanel perfume. Her hands, once accustomed to holding crystal glasses, now wielded mops and rags with painful efficiency. The work was her salvation and her penance. At night, while the offices slept, Lauren fought a silent battle. The physical effort was immense for her transforming body. Back pain was constant, and exhaustion her inseparable companion. Often, in the employee bathroom, she would lean on the sink, breathing deeply, feeling her son move inside her and whispering, This is for you. All of this is for you. She was a shadow, a functional presence no one noticed. The few employees who stayed late saw her as part of the furniture. To them, she had no name, no history. And that was exactly what she wanted. The language of power. One night, while cleaning the executive boardroom on the top floor, a floor Lauren usually avoided, she allowed herself a moment of weakness. She stopped in front of the enormous floor-to-ceiling glass window, offering a stunning view of the Manhattan skyline. A solitary tear escaped. As Lauren continued cleaning, a muffled but tense sound came through the wall of the main conference room, the one they called the aquarium because of its glass walls. "Unacceptable! It's impossible!" a male voice roared, the sound vibrating through the closed door. It was rare to see movement on that floor so late at night, especially in the executive suites. She began to push her cart, wanting only to pass in silence and move away from that heavy energy. At the exact moment she passed the frosted glass door, it burst open. A tall man in an impeccably cut suit, but with disheveled hair and a face red with fury, appeared in the doorway. His eyes swept the corridor and landed on Lauren, not on her as a person, but on her uniform. It was Elias Thorne, the CEO, the owner of that entire empire. "You," he said, his voice cutting like broken glass. "Come here, they spilled water on the table. Clean it up, fast." He didn't wait for an answer. He just turned and walked back inside. Leaving the door ajar, Lauren, head bowed, entered the room. The atmosphere was contained chaos. Papers were scattered on the immense conference table, and a spilled glass of water created a puddle dangerously close to a laptop. Elias Thorne paced like a caged lion, the phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care about the time-down difference, Dimitri. The deadline is tomorrow morning. Your translators are incompetent. This paragraph could cost us the biggest contract in this company's history." He slammed the phone onto the table. "Sir, the sworn translator we found can only see the document tomorrow afternoon," said one of the directors, his voice trembling. "We tried 3 different translation programs, but the versions don't match. Clause 4.7b comes out incomprehensible in all of them. It seems to be a very specific technical dialect." "Incomprehensible." Elias laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "I'll tell you what's incomprehensible. It's incomprehensible that my executive team, with 6-figure salaries, can't solve a translation problem. We're talking about a $200 million contract with Russia's largest grain distributor, and we're going to lose it because of one paragraph." In a fit of fury and despair, he slammed his hand on the table. "I offer my own salary for this month. 1 month of my salary to anyone in this room who can translate this damn document now, perfectly, so I can call Dimitri and tell him what it says." A heavy silence fell over the room. The directors looked at each other, helpless. It was an impossible challenge. Lauren finished wiping the last drop of water. She should leave, return to the safety of her anonymity. But the Cyrillic words on the paper, visible from where she stood, leaped out at her. She read them and understood them. She understood the complexity, the technical nuance, the legal jargon that would confuse any software. It was her area. It was the world she had left behind. Her heart pounded. It was a risk, a gigantic risk. But the image of the empty crib in her apartment, the memory of her painful nights, the urgency of giving her son a secure life, all this outweighed the fear. The dignity she sought was not just in working hard, but in using the gifts she possessed. With the cleaning cloth still in her hand, she straightened up. For the first time in months, her posture was not that of a bent-over cleaner, but of Lauren Sayer. "I can translate it." Her voice, though low, cut the silence like a blade. All eyes in the room turned to her. First, confusion. Then, disbelief. Elias Thorne stared at her, his eyebrows furrowed as if she were a mirage. "What did you say?" he asked, his tone mixed with scorn and irritation. I said I can translate the document, sir, Lauren repeated, her voice firmer now. She stepped forward toward the table. I speak Russian fluently. One of the directors let out a nervous chuckle. Ma'am, with all due respect, this is a complex legal document. I know, she interrupted him, her eyes fixed on Elias. It's an intermodal logistics contract, specifically about transshipment liability clauses in unsecured territory and penalties for refrigerated container failure. Clause 4.7b, which the software doesn't understand, uses an archaic Soviet maritime law term to define force majeure. It needs to be translated conceptually, not literally. The director's jaws dropped. Elias Thorne was now looking at her with a different intensity. The anger in his eyes gave way to a gleam of shock and curiosity. He studied her for a long second, the woman in the gray uniform, speaking with an authority that in no way matched her position. Hesitantly, but with no other option, he pushed the paper across the table toward her. Translate. Lauren placed the cleaning cloth on the edge of the cart. Her hands, which minutes before were scrubbing the floor, picked up the document with a forgotten familiarity. Her eyes scanned the lines, and the words flowed from her, not in Portuguese, but in perfect English. The language of negotiation. She didn't just translate. She interpreted, explained the nuances, contextualized the terms, offering Elias not just the text, but the weapon he needed for his negotiation. Her translation was clearer, more precise, and more intelligent than any machine could ever produce. When she finished, a stunned silence filled the room. She had deciphered the indecipherable in less than 5 minutes. Elias grabbed his phone. He dialed. When Dmitri answered, he spoke with a lethal calm, using the exact words and concepts Lauren had provided. The conversation was short. Upon hanging up, a victorious smile, the first of the night, appeared on his face. The contract is ours, he announced to the room. The directors erupted in sighs of relief. Elias then turned to Lauren. The astonishment on his face was genuine. Who are you? He asked, his voice now devoid of any arrogance. Lauren looked at him. The exhaustion of the night, of her life, mixed with a new, fierce determination. She was no longer a shadow. I am the woman who just saved your $200 million contract, she said, her voice calm and unshakable. And you owe me your 1-month salary. Chapter 3. The New Pact. The echo of Lauren's words lingered in the boardroom, charged with a weight none of the attendees expected. The directors looked from her to Elias, slack-jawed, witnessing a power reversal so sudden and complete, it seemed unreal. The cleaner had not only saved the deal of the year, but was now collecting, without a hint of hesitation, the promise made by the most Urfulen in the room. Elias Thorne stared at her for a long moment, the initial shock giving way to deep evaluation. He saw the fatigue on her shoulders, but also the steel spine that kept her upright. He saw the simplicity of the gray uniform and the complexity of an intellect that had just outperformed his entire elite team. He, a man accustomed to absolute control, was completely disarmed. A slow, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. It wasn't a smile of mockery, but of genuine admiration. Fair, he said, his voice now calm and controlled. A promise is a promise. He looked at his CFO, who still seemed unable to believe what he was seeing. Prepare the transfer, the full amount of my gross salary for this month. He then turned back to Lauren. The payment will be processed tomorrow morning. I need your details. They're in HR, Lauren replied, her calm mirroring his. She didn't allow herself to smile or show relief. She just stated it, as if concluding a transaction of that magnitude was the most natural thing in the world. She picked up her cleaning cloth, put it back on the cart, and with the same discretion with which she entered, she turned to leave. "Wait," Elias said. "What is your name?" "Lauren," she replied without turning around. And then she disappeared into the corridor, leaving behind a dense silence, full of unanswered questions. The next morning, Lauren woke up to a notification sound on her old cell phone. It was a bank message. A deposit had been made into her account. The amount was so astronomical, so absurdly larger than anything she owned, that she had to look twice, 3 times, to believe it. It was more money than she would need to care for her son for years. The first tear of true relief in many months ran down her face. It was security. It was a future. It was proof that her courage was not in vain. Later that same day, as she prepared for another night of work, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered. "Lauren, this is Elias Thorne." Her heart skipped a beat. "Mr. Thorne, please, call me Elias. I called to confirm the payment was made, but also to make a proposal. The contract with the Russians was signed, thanks to you. But it is complex and will have ramifications for months. I need someone who understands the nuances of their language and culture to follow the negotiations. Someone I can trust." There was a pause. "I'd like to offer you a freelance translator contract. You would work directly with me on this project. The rate will be substantial." Lauren sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the offer landing on her. Leave the anonymity? Working alongside the CEO was a risk, but it was also the opportunity to use her skills, to have a job that wouldn't break her body, especially now, with the pregnancy advancing. "I accept," she said, her voice firm. The deal was sealed. Lauren no longer needed to wear the gray uniform. From that day on, she began frequenting the top floor of the Thorne Global Logistics building, not as an invisible shadow, but as an essential consultant. The same directors who looked at her with disdain now greeted her with fearful respect. Elias was a demanding but fair boss, and his curiosity about her was palpable. During the long working hours, analyzing clauses and participating in video conferences with Moscow, he observed her. He noticed the way she switched from Portuguese to English and to Russian with impressive fluency. He noticed her strategic intelligence, her ability to anticipate problems, and her calm under pressure. That woman was an enigma. "Where did you learn to speak Russian like that?" he asked one day, after a particularly tense call she conducted masterfully. Lauren hesitated for a moment. "I lived in St. Petersburg for 2 years. I did part of my master's in international relations there." The revelation caught Elias by surprise. "Master's? And you were cleaning floors?" She stared at him, her eyes conveying a story of pain she didn't need to verbalize. "Life takes us down unexpected paths. I needed to start from scratch. I left everything behind. I wanted to build my own life, with my own work, with my own dignity." Gradually, in fragmented conversations between meetings, Elias pieced together the puzzle. He found out about her top-tier education, about the years she lived abroad, and, inevitably, through a discreet search conducted by his assistant, he found out about her marriage. Lauren Sayer Reed, the ex-wife of businessman Marcus Reed. One day, he confronted her, not with accusation, but with genuine curiosity. "You were married to Marcus Reed." Lauren didn't flinch. "Yes, I was." "What happened?" he asked. His voice gentle. She took a deep breath, deciding to give him the part of the truth that mattered. He decided he wanted a different life, with a different person. And I decided I didn't want anything that came from him. So I left, with only what I could carry. I wanted to build my own life. She didn't mention the betrayal. And more importantly, she didn't mention the pregnancy. To her, her son was her sanctuary, a matter too intimate to be shared in that professional environment. She feared judgment, rumors, The possibility of him seeing her as complicated. The same word Marcus had used to discard her. The revelation transformed the way Elias saw her. The admiration he felt for her competence now mixed with a deep respect for her strength of character. This woman wasn't just brilliant. She was a survivor. A phoenix he had been lucky enough to find in the ashes. And for the first time in his life, focused on business and profit, Elias Thorne felt the desire to protect and care for something far more valuable than a multi-million-dollar contract. Chapter 4. The Threat and the Shield. The proximity to Elias was a balm and a torment for Lauren. Working alongside him, sensing his admiration and respect, awakened feelings in her heart she thought were forever dormant. Yes, she was falling in love with Elias, but this growing feeling was accompanied by a chilling panic. There was a secret between them, a secret that was visibly growing every day. Her belly, now in its 6th month of pregnancy, could no longer be disguised by loose blazers or empire-cut dresses. It was a physical truth, a constant presence that reminded her of her vulnerability. Telling him seemed impossible. How to explain hiding something so fundamental? What if he saw her as dishonest? Or worse, as a problem, a complication with another man's baggage? The fear paralyzed her. While Lauren shone in the executive suite, the seeds of envy germinated on the lower floors. Her meteoric rise, from cleaner to CEO's confidant, was the main topic in coffees and corridors. For many, it was a fairy tale. For others, especially for some employees, who had long coveted an opportunity or a glance from Elias Thorne, it was an affront. Lauren's evident pregnancy became the perfect weapon for them. The rumors started as poisonous whispers. Did you see the boss's new protege? Pregnant. Who is the father? Strange that she appeared like that, out of nowhere. They say she was a cleaner. She must have done something to climb so fast. The malicious narrative spread like wildfire, fueled by envy and resentment. The story became distorted into a manufactured truth. The mysterious translator was using a pregnancy of dubious origin to take advantage of the CEO. The gossip reached the ears of 2 older directors, men who felt threatened by Lauren's growing influence and uncomfortable with the attention Elias dedicated to her. They saw her as an anomaly, a breach in the company hierarchy. The pregnancy was the perfect excuse to restore order. One afternoon, when Elias was on a day trip to NYC, Lauren was summoned to a meeting. Upon entering the room, she found the 2 directors with serious, calculated expressions. There was no cordiality in their gaze. "Lauren, please sit down," said one of them. Mr. Mason, a gray-haired man with a cold stare. "We have been informed of your condition." Lauren's heart dropped. "My condition?" "Your pregnancy," the other director, Mr. Valde, completed bluntly. "The company has policies, you know, and your situation, frankly, has become a topic of distraction and speculation. Since you are a freelancer, not an employee, it is not good for the company's image." "My work has been impeccable," Lauren replied, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "My personal life does not interfere with my responsibilities." "That's not how it looks," Mason retorted. "Your rise was quick, your history is nebulous, and now, this pregnancy. We need to protect the company, and protect Mr. Thorne from embarrassing situations." The threat was implicit. They were painting her as a gold digger. They gave her the options, both cruel. They could pretend she vanished, or she could sign a letter of voluntary resignation, citing personal reasons, and leave discreetly with a small financial compensation for her silence. The humiliation hit her hard. She thought about fighting, about going to Elias and telling him everything. But fear overcame her. The fear that he, upon learning of the pregnancy from third parties, amid so many rumors, would believe their version. the fear of having to justify herself, of appearing weak, of seeing the admiration in his eyes turn into pity, or worse, distrust. The wound left by Marcus was still sensitive. She couldn't bear another rejection. With her head bowed and her soul in pieces, she picked up the pen. She signed her own sentence, feeling as helpless as the day she was abandoned. Chapter 5. The reckoning. Elias returned the next day, eager to discuss the next steps of the Russian project with Lauren. Arriving on her floor, he found a strange silence. Her desk was empty. "Where is Lauren?" he asked his secretary. The secretary avoided his gaze. "She resigned, sir, yesterday afternoon. She left this letter." Elias took the envelope, incredulous. The letter was short, formal, and impersonal. "Due to personal reasons, I submit my resignation." It made no sense. They were at the peak of a project. Their relationship deepened every day. Why would she leave like this, without a word, without a phone call? He called her cell phone. Voicemail. He called again, and again. Nothing. Confused and with a bad feeling in his gut, he summoned Mason and Valdez. What happened here? Why did Lauren resign? The two directors exchanged a rehearsed look. "Mr. Thorne," Mason began, with false solemnity. "It was a delicate situation. We found out she's pregnant." Elias felt a punch to the gut. Pregnant? And what does that have to do with anything? "Well," Valdez continued, "she hid it from everyone. And with the rumors circulating, we thought she felt pressured and preferred to leave. We don't know who the father is. She was married to Reed, but it seems she had been involved with other men. It looks like a complicated situation." Elias's mind began to spin, connecting the dots in the most painful way possible. She hid the pregnancy from him. She, who told him about being abandoned, was pregnant by another man. Who? What men? A secret boyfriend she never mentioned? Or worse, the timeline was tight. Had she cheated on her ex-husband, gotten pregnant by another, and then been abandoned by both? The woman he placed on a pedestal of integrity and strength suddenly seemed like a liar, a manipulator. The admiration he felt turned into bitter disappointment. He felt like a fool who almost fell in love with a well-constructed farce. The pain of betrayal, even if imagined, blinded him. He didn't question the director's aversion. He only felt the rage and disillusionment take over. In a gesture of wounded pride, he opened his contact list, found the name Lauren, and with a finger trembling with fury, hit delete. He erased her from his phone, and with the same determination, he swore to himself that he would erase her from his life. Epilogue. The power of truth. Night fell over the city, but for Elias, the darkness was inside his office. The whiskey in the glass couldn't quell the bitterness he felt. He paced, the image of Lauren in his mind fragmenting. The brilliant, integral woman he admired now merged with the image of a stranger, full of secrets. He picked up the phone and called his best friend, needing to vent, to let out the confusion that consumed him. "I don't understand, Ricardo," he said, his voice strained with frustration. "She just disappeared, and the whole story. Pregnant. She never said a word to me. I feel like an idiot. I was about to get truly involved, and she was lying to me the whole time. Who does that?" At that exact moment, the office door opened silently. It was Saida, with her cleaning cart, ready to start the night shift. She stopped in the doorway, hearing her friend's name mentioned with such pain and anger. Her instinct was to back away, not to interfere. But then she saw the suffering on her boss's face, a suffering mirrored in what she saw on Lauren's face the day before, and her loyal heart wouldn't let her stay silent. That injustice could not prevail. With a courage she didn't know she had, Saida cleared her throat. "Excuse me, Thorne." Elias turned, surprised and a little irritated by the interruption. "Not now, please." "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to overhear." Sita said, taking a step inside the room, her hands twisting the cleaning cloth. But you're talking about Lauren, and what you're thinking is all wrong. Elias put down the phone, his curiosity overriding his irritation. What are you talking about? Lauren is not a liar, Sita continued, her voice choked with emotion. She is the strongest, most honest woman I have ever met. Do you know why she never spoke about the pregnancy? Because of fear, because of shame. That baby she's expecting is from her ex-husband, the millionaire who kicked her out of the house the same day she told him she was pregnant. He abandoned her at the worst moment of her life. Every word from Sita was like a light being turned on in a dark room, revealing the brutal truth Elias had refused to see. She came to Queens with nothing, Sita continued, tears now streaming down her face. She refused his allowance because she didn't want his dirty money. She just wanted to raise her son with dignity. She hid her belly as much as she could because she desperately needed this job. She was afraid of being fired if anyone found out. And that's what happened, wasn't it? Someone spread the rumor, and they used it to get rid of her here. Sita took a deep breath, looking directly at the most powerful man in the company. That money you gave her, your salary, she didn't spend on luxuries. She paid a year's rent in advance and bought the baby's layette to ensure he had a roof and the basics. The salary she earned here as your translator was for the day-to-day, for food, for bills. She's not a gold digger. She's a mother trying to survive. Elias was paralyzed, the glass of whiskey forgotten in his hand. The image the directors painted, the story his own pain constructed, it all crumbled. He didn't see a liar. He saw a terrified woman, fighting the world alone, trying to protect herself and her son, the same way a wild animal protects its young. He had judged her with the same cruelty the world had already dealt her. The emotion hit him with the force of a wave, a mixture of shame, regret, and an even deeper admiration than he felt before. "Where is she?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I need her address, her number, please." Sita jotted down Lauren's address and new phone number on a piece of paper. Elias grabbed it as if it were a treasure. He didn't wait. He left the office, got into his car, and drove into the night, crossing the bridge to Queens. The new beginning. He found her in her small, simple apartment. When Lauren opened the door and saw him standing there in her hallway, her face paled. She flinched instinctively, one hand protecting her belly, expecting the final blow, the accusation, the confirmation of all her fears. But instead of rage, Elias's eyes were filled with deep regret. "Lauren," he said, his voice soft, "can we talk?" That night, they didn't dine at an expensive restaurant, but ordered a simple pizza they ate at her small kitchen table. And there, under the faint light, Lauren finally opened her heart. She told him everything: the betrayal, the cruel abandonment, the loneliness, the fear, the humiliation of the night job, the secret joy of feeling her son kick, the panic when confronted by the directors. She hid nothing, sparing no details, the tears finally allowing themselves to fall freely. Elias listened to every word, his heart breaking and rebuilding with each revelation. When she finished, he reached across the table and, hesitantly, covered her hand. "I was an idiot, Lauren. I should have trusted you, what I saw in you, and not the version they told me. I am so sorry for doubting you, even for an instant." He paused, his gaze intense. "What they did to you was low and cowardly, and it won't go unanswered. But first, I want to make things right with you. I still need you," he continued. "The Russian project needs you. I want you to come back to work for me, but on your terms, as a remote freelance translator, working from home. Respecting your pregnancy, your schedule, your well-being, away from the rumors, away from the company's dirty politics. Just you and me running this project together." Lauren looked at his tear-reddened eyes, but now shining with a new hope. His offer was not just a job. It was an apology. It was a gesture of trust. It was respect. It was him saying he saw all of her history, her pain, and her strength, and he wasn't afraid. For the first time since her life fell apart, she felt she could breathe. Lauren accepted Elias's offer with a nod. The tears still wet on her face were now tears of relief, not pain. In that small Queens apartment, amidst pizza boxes and exposed truths, they sealed a new pact, one that went far beyond a work contract. It was a pact of trust and mutual respect. This was an incredibly detailed and satisfying story. What do you think about Sita's role? Was she the true hero of this story, by having the courage to speak up? Chapter 6. The Unfolding of Trust. The following 3 months were a period of silent healing and transformation. Working from home, Lauren blossomed. Away from curious eyes and venomous whispers, she dedicated herself to her work with a focused mind, while experiencing the final stages of her pregnancy with the peace that had been stolen from her. Communication with Elias was daily, a constant blend of business and personal conversations. Video conferences about the Russian contract frequently extended, transforming into long chats about life, dreams, and fears. Elias, in turn, became a constant and gentle presence in her life. He wasn't invasive, but his care manifested in small gestures. A delivery from her favorite restaurant when he knew she was tired, a text message asking if she needed anything, or simply his willingness to listen. He respected the barrier she still maintained around her heart, but with patience and consistency, he slowly dismantled it. When little Arthur was born, a healthy baby boy with curious eyes and brown curls, Elias was one of the first people to know. He visited her in the hospital, not as the CEO of Thorne Global Logistics, but as a friend. Holding the baby in his arms for the first time, a wave of protectiveness washed over him, a feeling that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with love. He was falling in love not just with Lauren, but with the small family she represented. As the months passed, their relationship naturally evolved into dating. They were discreet at first, but it was impossible to hide the happiness they both radiated. When Arthur's routine was established and Lauren found a trusted nanny, recommended by Sita, she felt it was time for the next step. Elias invited her to return to the company, but not as a freelancer. He created a position for her, Director of International Relations, an executive post that matched her capability and the value she brought to the firm. Chapter 7. The Return and the Reckoning. Lauren's return to Thorne Global Logistics was like a shockwave. She entered the building no longer with her head bowed, but held high, walking beside Elias. Her presence on the executive floor, now as the CEO's partner and a board member, silenced some, but inflamed others. The criticisms were veiled, but sharp. He promoted her because he's sleeping with her. What serious man takes on a woman with another man's child? The same directors who had sabotaged her, Mason and Valdez, who Elias had demoted after discovering the truth, now led the silent defamation campaign. Elias was aware of every rumor and every sideways glance, but his indifference was his greatest weapon. In a general meeting, he made a point of formally introducing Lauren, not just as the new director, but as his partner. "Many of you met Lauren under different circumstances," he said to the team, his voice resonating with authority. "But today, I want you to know her for who she is, the most competent professional I have ever encountered, and the woman I am proud to have by my side." He held her hand, the public gesture silencing most of the critics. He didn't care about her past or the origin of her son. He cared about the woman of unshakable strength she was. He claimed her with pride, and his pride became her shield. For Lauren, sitting at that executive table, on the same floor where she once scrubbed the floors, was the final validation of her journey. She was no longer invisible. She was seen, respected, and loved, not despite her history, but because of it. As the years passed, the dust settled, wounds healed, and the love between Lauren and Elias deepened, solidified by mutual respect and the joy of raising little Arthur, who grew into a happy, loved boy. It was on a sunny Thursday afternoon, nearly 3 years after that triumphant return, that the past and present collided spectacularly. The scene was the very personification of Lauren's success. She was exiting the main door of Thorne Global Logistics, laughing at something Elias was saying beside her. He held her waist with protective affection as she adjusted little Arthur, now a boy of almost 3, in her arms, who babbled animatedly. Lauren was radiant, the image of a fulfilled and powerful woman. And it was at that exact moment that Marcus Reed, parking his Mercedes to drop his new girlfriend off at the advertising agency in the same building, saw the scene. He froze. The blood drained from his face as he watched the ghost of his biggest mistake pass a few feet from his car. The woman he discarded, prosperous. The man beside her, a billionaire he secretly envied. And the child he abandoned before he was even born. Lauren walked past him, her gaze focused on her family, on her future, and she didn't even notice him. To her, he was just part of the landscape. To him, she was an earthquake shaking the very foundations of his carefully constructed life. Chapter 8. The Price of Regret. Open ending. The initial shock gave way to a feverish obsession. The image of Lauren, Elias, and, most importantly, the boy, wouldn't leave Marcus's mind. He needed to know. After a few calls to old mutual contacts, he managed to get Lauren's number. She ignored the first call. The second, too. On the third, she answered, her voice cold and professional. "Lauren, it's Marcus." A silence on the other end of the line. "What do you want, Marcus?" "I saw you," he said, his voice hurried. "Today, in front of the building. You were with a boy. I need to know, Lauren. Who is that child?" "I don't think that's any of your business," she replied, ready to hang up. "Please," he almost pleaded, desperation leaking into his voice. "His age. He looks the right age. Is he my son?" Lauren took a deep breath, gathering all her strength. She would not give him the satisfaction of drama, only the truth. Stark and simple. "Yes, Marcus. His name is Arthur. Arthur, and yes, he is your son." The silence on the other end was the confirmation of the impact. In the days that followed, Marcus began a desperate campaign to get closer. He called, he sent messages, he showed up unannounced at her building's lobby with expensive gifts for Arthur, offering money, allowance, everything she had once refused. Lauren, with the calm of one who has already won the war, talked to Elias and made a decision. She would allow Marcus to meet his son, not for him, but for Arthur, who one day would have the right to know his biological father. The meeting was scheduled at a park, neutral territory. Marcus arrived anxious, his heart pounding. He saw Arthur running on the grass, and his eyes filled with tears. He tried to hug Lauren, but she recoiled, her body rigid. "He's beautiful," Marcus stammered, handing a huge teddy bear to the boy, who looked at him suspiciously. "Yes, he is," Lauren agreed, her voice devoid of any emotion. He tried to justify himself, spoke about regret, about not knowing what he was doing. Lauren listened in silence. When he finished, she stared at him with firm eyes and uttered the words that would forever haunt him. "You need to understand one thing, Marcus. You didn't lose a relationship, you lost a family." The open question. Marcus looked at the small Arthur, who was now playing nearby with Elias, who watched the scene from a respectful distance, ready to intervene if necessary. In that instant, Marcus saw everything he had thrown away. "I can fix it," Marcus pleaded, his voice choked, his pride shattered into 1,000 pieces. "We can be a family again. I love you." Lauren observed him, and for the first time she felt neither pain nor anger, only a kind of sad compassion for the man he was. She shook her head slowly, the decision in her eyes as solid as a rock. "You don't love me, Marcus. You love the idea of what you lost. You abandoned me at the worst moment of my life, carrying your son." Her gaze shifted to where Elias was, and a soft smile touched her lips. "Elias found me at my lowest. He saw me when I was invisible to the rest of the world. He picked me up and showed me what true respect and love were, without asking for absolutely anything in return. For Arthur's sake, we can be civilized. You deserve to know your biological father, but that's all it is. My heart, my family, they already have a place, and it's not with you." Marcus finally felt defeated. He watched as Lauren walked toward Elias, who enveloped her in his arms and kissed the top of her head. Together, the three of them walked away, a complete and unlikable family, leaving Marcus alone in the park with the ghosts of his choices. The final confrontation was over, but the future was still being written. Lauren had found love, security, and the family she created. Marcus was left with an open door to his son's life, but only as a supervised, secondary figure. The question that remains: can Marcus accept his new, marginal role and become a decent co-parent? Or will his wounded pride and obsession with the family he lost resurface to threaten the fragile peace Lauren and Elias built? Chapter 9. The Trial of Co-Parenting. A month after the park confrontation, Marcus Reed was forced to confront the harsh reality. His access to his son, Arthur, was entirely at Lauren's discretion, and his own pride was a burden she refused to carry. The visitation schedule was strict, a few supervised hours every Saturday morning at a child-friendly center, with Lauren always present or within immediate reach. It wasn't the family Marcus desperately craved. It was a sterile, regulated connection. Marcus's greatest test wasn't the money, but the humility. The first few meetings were agonizing. Marcus brought expensive, oversized toys, a miniature electric car, a drone, attempts to buy back lost time, all of which Lauren calmly vetoed, citing the need for normalcy. "Arthur needs books and stability, Marcus, not compensation for your guilt," she stated flatly one morning, carefully checking the teddy bear Marcus brought for choking hazards. His rage simmered under the surface. He was used to commanding boardrooms, not being policed by the woman he had discarded. He wanted to blame Elias Thorne, the quiet billionaire who now occupied the center of his former life. But Elias remained invisible, his presence a silent, formidable shield around Lauren and Arthur. The breaking point came when Marcus learned that Arthur called Elias Leah, a term of endearment for Papa Elias, a small, intimate detail that ripped through Marcus's carefully controlled composure. During a supervised visit, Marcus lost control. "I am your father, Arthur. I am your blood," he insisted, grabbing the boy's arm too tightly. Arthur, startled, immediately burst into tears, instinctively reaching for Lauren. Lauren's voice was like ice. "That's enough. The visit is over." She scooped up the sobbing child, her eyes burning with a terrifying calm. "You chose the title of biological father, Marcus, but the title of dad is earned with years of presence and love. You just lost your visitation rights for the next month." The fallout was immediate. Marcus's calls and emails to Lauren went unanswered. He was faced with the ultimate consequence: total exclusion from his son's life, a solitude he had created entirely himself. Chapter 10. The Path of Acceptance. Faced with the threat of permanent exclusion, something finally broke inside Marcus: his arrogance. He didn't call his lawyer, he called his only remaining contact, a former colleague who had witnessed his fall. He sought therapy, not to manipulate the system, but to confront the deep-seated fear and entitlement that had ruined his life. A month later, he contacted Lauren with a single, humble, handwritten letter. "I was wrong. I apologize for my behavior. I will respect your boundaries and rules. I will not bring gifts or pressure, Arthur. I will focus only on being a kind, safe uncle figure for the limited time you allow me. I understand I have to earn your trust back, and I accept that it may take years." The following Saturday, Marcus arrived at the center alone. He brought a book about construction, a topic he knew Arthur loved. He spoke softly, focusing entirely on the boy's interests. He didn't mention Dad. He didn't ask questions about Elias. He was simply Marcus, the quiet, safe man reading stories. Lauren watched him, her eyes guarded but observant. She saw a genuine shift. She saw a man fighting the man he used to be. The visit slowly resumed. Arthur, naturally resilient, began to look forward to seeing Marcus. He still called Elias Leah, but he accepted Marcus's simple presence. The dynamic settled into a strained, cautious peace. Lauren maintained the distance, focusing on her career and her family with Elias. Marcus accepted his new, minimal role, his presence a testament to his painful acceptance. The question of their future remains. Can Marcus continue to choose humility over his wounded pride? Or will the proximity to the life he lost, the love between Lauren and Elias, eventually consume him? And for Lauren and Elias, has the stability they built been tested enough to move their relationship out of the separate bedrooms and into a commitment as husband and wife? Tuyet voi, chúng ta sẽ tiếp tục câu chuyện Lauren, Elias và Marcus để xem sự cân bằng mong manh mà họ đã thiết lập sẽ dẫn đến đâu, đặc biệt là trong mối quan hệ giữa Lauren và Elias. Chapter 11. The Crossing of the Threshold. The cautious peace established by the visitation routine allowed Lauren and Elias to finally turn their attention inward. For months, their bond had been defined by a shared purpose: protecting Arthur and building a stable future. They were an unshakable team, but they were still sleeping in separate wings of the penthouse. One Saturday evening, after Marcus's visit, Arthur was tucked into bed, dreaming peacefully. Lauren found Elias in the library, a space they rarely used for work, reserving it for deep conversations. Elias looked up from a book, his expression open and patient. "He's asleep," Lauren whispered, leaning against the doorway. "He seemed happy today," Elias noted, closing the book. "Marcus is finally learning." "He is," Lauren agreed, her voice tired. "But every visit is still an emotional drain. It reminds me how long I was alone, and how much I fought to get here." Elias stood up, walking toward her. "You don't have to fight anymore, Lauren. Not alone. And certainly not with me." He gently took her hands. "We've built something real. Something that withstood an earthquake and a hurricane. We've proven we are partners for life, for commitment, and for chaos. But we haven't given us a chance." The unspoken question hung between them. Lauren knew what he was asking. It wasn't about rushing. It was about acknowledging their reality. "I love you, Elias," she confessed, the words both terrifying and liberating. "But I'm afraid of bringing the debris of my past into your future. I'm afraid I'm only good at being a strong, single fighter." Elias smiled, a warm, reassuring expression. "That strong single fighter is the woman I fell in love with. And debris? We clean up debris together. That's what true partnership is." He didn't rush the moment. He simply held her gaze in a an invitation. That night, for the first time since they moved into the new home, Lauren didn't walk back to her own room. She crossed the threshold into Elias's life, not out of necessity or fear, but out of choice, sealing their bond with a promise of a real future, no longer defined by separate wings or past betrayals. Chapter 12. The quiet proposal. 6 months later, life had settled into a rhythm of effortless intimacy. Lauren thrived as the director of international relations, balancing her demanding career with family life. She and Elias functioned as a true unit, their shared bed a testament to the fact that they were finally home. The stability they had created was palpable, and it was reflected in Arthur's joyful, confident demeanor. Marcus, observing the calm, accepted that the family he lost was now the secure family his son belonged to. On the day of Arthur's 5th birthday, Elias didn't plan a grand gesture. He waited until they were at the small community park, where they often took Arthur. Arthur was engrossed in a game of chase. Elias turned to Lauren, who was watching their son with pure love. He didn't pull out a flashy diamond ring. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an antique silver locket. Simple, elegant, and worn. "I know we don't need a piece of paper to be a family," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "But this locket belonged to my grandmother. She wore it every day as a reminder that the greatest treasures in life are the ones you build, not the ones you inherit." He opened it. Inside one side was a tiny picture of Arthur. The other side was empty. "I want you to hold the key to our future, Lauren Sayer. And I want to spend the rest of my life earning the right to fill the other side of this locket with a picture of you, my wife. Will you marry me?" Lauren's eyes filled with tears, not of pain, but of overwhelming joy. The woman who had been discarded for having baggage was being proposed to with a symbol of enduring family and trust. "Yes, Elias, 1,000 times yes." They celebrated quietly, just the three of them, later that evening. The wedding, when it came, was small, intimate, and held in the same park where Elias proposed, with Arthur proudly serving as the ring-bearer. Epilogue. The final piece. Years later, Lauren Sayer Thorne was celebrated not just as a successful executive, but as a visionary leader who infused the corporate world with ethical purpose. Her company, under her guidance, became a model for social and environmental responsibility. Marcus Reed never fully regained his former status, but he found a modest, functional life. His visits with Arthur became less frequent but more genuine, focused solely on the boy's well-being. He accepted that he was the biological father, nothing more, and he was no longer a threat to the peace. Arthur, now a young man, grew up knowing two truths. He was loved fiercely by the parents who raised him, Lauren and Elias, and he was the product of a past mistake, Marcus, that ironically led to the beautiful life he now had. The family was complete. The quiet strength forged in the shadows had not only led to personal triumph, but had also built an empire defined by integrity and unconditional love. The woman who once thought she was a burden had become the very foundation of everything that truly mattered.